Getting a Big Four offer is one of those things that feels mysterious until you're actually in the process. Nobody gives you a clear picture of what the timeline actually looks like, what they're really evaluating you on, or what separates the people who get offers from the people who don't. In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how Big Four recruiting works from start to finish, and what I wish someone had told me before I went through it. I work in accounting at a Big Four firm. I went through the full recruiting process and came out the other side with an offer. I'm not going to tell you it was easy or that I had some secret formula, but I can tell you what actually mattered and what was mostly noise. First, let's just establish the timeline because it's earlier than most people expect. Big Four recruiting for full-time positions operates almost entirely on a campus recruiting cycle. For most programs, that means the process kicks off in the fall of your junior year if you're undergraduate, or the fall of your first year if you're in a master's program. Here's a rough timeline of how it typically flows. September and October, networking events, office visits, meet the firm's nights. This is where most people underestimate how much work is actually happening. Firms are already forming impressions of candidates at this stage. November through January, applications are open and first round interviews begin. At most firms, this is a single interview, sometimes remote and sometimes in person, depending on the firm and your location. It's primarily behavioral. They're getting a first impression and seeing if you can hold a professional conversation. January through February. If you move forward, you'll typically have a second round interview, often with a partner or senior leader at the firm. Some firms also host office visits around this time, which are part social, part evaluation. You're meeting the team, seeing the office, and they're seeing how you carry yourself outside of a formal interview setting. February through March, offers extended. The whole process from first contact to offer is roughly 5 to 6 months. Starting to network in October thinking you have plenty of time is one of the most common mistakes I see. I would also recommend attending an event here or there before your junior year if you want to get a head start. Let me talk about networking because it's the most misunderstood part of this whole process. When firms say they value networking, they're not just being polite. The people you meet at information sessions and office visits are often the same people reviewing your application and conducting your interviews. They take notes. They remember who asked thoughtful questions and who stood in the corner checking their phone. Networking in this context means 3 specific things. First, showing up to every recruiting event your school offers with that firm. Not just the big ones. The smaller coffee chats and office hours are where you actually get remembered. Second, following up. After every interaction with a firm representative, send a short LinkedIn message or email within 24 hours. Thank them for their time, reference something specific from your conversation, express your interest. Most candidates don't do this. The ones who do stand out immediately. Third, asking good questions. Not, what's the culture like? Every candidate asks that. Ask about their specific career path, what surprised them about the job, what they wish they'd known going in. You'll get real answers and you'll be remembered as someone who is genuinely curious rather than just going through the motions. One thing I'd add, be consistent across firms early in the process, even if you have a clear preference. Offer timelines don't always align, and having multiple options protects you. The application itself is straightforward, but there are a few things worth knowing. GPA matters, but it's not the whole story. Most Big Four firms have a minimum threshold, typically around 3.0, though it varies by firm and office. But above that threshold, GPA is just one factor among many. I've seen people with 3.9s get rejected, and people with 3.2s get offers. What you do outside the classroom matters. Leadership experience is weighted heavily. Accounting club officer, volunteer work, part-time jobs that show responsibility. These signal that you can manage competing priorities and work with people, which is most of what the job actually requires. Your resume should be one page, clean, and tailored to each firm. Not dramatically different, but reference the specific firm's values or service lines you're interested in. Generic resumes are obvious and forgettable. The cover letter is often optional, but I'd always submit one. Keep it to 3 short paragraphs. Why accounting, why this firm specifically, and one concrete thing that connects your experience to the role. That's it. The interview process at Big Four is almost entirely behavioral. You're not solving case studies or doing technical accounting problems. You're answering questions about how you've handled situations in the past. The framework they're using is called STAR: situation, task, action, result. Every behavioral question is best answered using this structure. Tell me about a time you dealt with a difficult team member. Tell me about a time you had to manage competing deadlines. Tell me about a failure and what you learned from it. Prepare 5 to 6 strong stories from your experience that can flex to answer multiple question types. A good story about leading a group project can answer questions about leadership, conflict resolution, and time management, depending on how you frame it. The thing most candidates underestimate is how much the interviewer is evaluating fit rather than just competence. They're asking themselves, could I put this person in front of a client? Would I want to work with them on a late night during busy season? Being warm, genuine, and easy to talk to matters as much as having polished answers. I've thought about this a lot, and here's my honest take on what actually makes the difference. Consistency throughout the process. The candidates who get offers are almost always the ones who showed up reliably at every touch point. Networking events, follow-ups, interviews, without being overbearing. Firms are evaluating your professionalism across the entire process, not just in the interview room. Genuine interest in the specific firm. Partners and managers have seen thousands of candidates. They can tell immediately when someone is going through the motions versus when someone has actually done their homework and has a real reason for wanting to be there specifically. Self-awareness. Being able to talk honestly about your weaknesses, failures, and areas for growth without being defensive or over-rehearsed. The candidates who try to turn every weakness into a strength come across as inauthentic. The ones who say something real and explain what they learned from it are memorable. And frankly, timing and luck play a role too. Headcount varies by office and year. Sometimes great candidates don't get offers because the numbers weren't there. If that happens, it doesn't mean you weren't good enough. It means recruiting is imperfect and you should keep going. Recruiting for Big Four is a process you can absolutely prepare for and do well in if you start early, take the networking seriously, and show up as a genuine version of yourself rather than a rehearsed one. If you're currently going through recruiting or about to start, I'll be covering more of this on the channel: salary breakdowns, service line comparisons, and what to expect in your first year. Subscribe to the Audit Trail, and I'll see you in the next one.